Welcome. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. It's a condition for our happiness to be here together, to be able to enjoy such a luxury. Thank you for coming. I'm Keith Mesker, and there's nothing I like more in the world than being mindful as best I can and sharing the practice of mindfulness. Feeling joy and happiness and being a source of joy and happiness is all I could ask for. Yeah, my weather report is I'm excited, and I feel happy, and I feel nervous, which is kind of a cheating way of saying scared. And in my practice, I practice the first thing I do when I wake up. I make a cup of tea and I go to the cushion, and I do that religiously. And it does shift the whole quality of my day. I remember once I didn't do it, and in the middle of the day, things would come up, and I would go, oh, I got to remember to deal with that. Oh, I got to deal with that. And I thought, I'm not usually like this. And I thought, I didn't meditate today. So when you said the reactivity of the day goes down with the daily practice, yeah, that's definitely been my experience. So a little class overview. We're using, since all of you weren't here last time, we're using Thich Nhat Hanh's book, The Art of Living, and we're going through. There's 7 chapters to it, and we're going through each of those as a theme. And this book is the cream of 70 years of teaching. And I highly, recommend it. Just get it, and it's a treasure. So we're here to learn how to practice mindfulness as the art of generating happiness for ourselves and for others. And we're empowering ourselves to acknowledge our difficulties and to deal with them. And to see clearly, and to see how we have wrong views. And almost all views are wrong in some ways. So not being attached to our views and realizing that the world is bigger than our views is very important. And a 5-word summary of this practice is stopping, calming, resting, healing, and transforming. And I just love the flow of that. It happens all at once in all these different levels, but that if there were a sequential path, that would, I think, be my best way of saying it. And so I'd like to empower you to establish a daily practice and to find or to form a community to practice with. It could be you and one other person. It's hugely important to do this together. You'd think meditation was something that you just do alone because, after all, you're not talking. But it's, just like we heard people talk about you just feel the energy of the space. and then it's a huge support for a daily practice if you have a weekly community that you meet with, even if it's only one person. And each class will include teaching, guided meditation. I love guided meditations. They make this process easy. Walking meditation. And walking meditations, it's great because it's something of a bridge between silent, still meditation and life as we live it. And it's also, if you're too stormy to sit and meditate, then walking can make meditation possible when you might not feel up to it otherwise. So this is the bell of mindfulness. It's calling us back to our true home in the present moment, to our breath, to our bodies, to our feelings, to our imaginations, and to our awareness. So I'll invite the sound of the bell. I learned this mindfulness practice in the community of Thich Nhat Hanh. And I'm not bringing Buddhism to you. I'm bringing this mindfulness practice, but that is where I've learned this particular practice. And the way we use the bell is you'll hear this half sound. And that's letting you know that a full sound of the bell is coming. So it's an invitation to stop and to stand in a beautiful way or sit in a beautiful way and get ready to receive the full sound of the bell. And the job of the bell master, me in this case, is to give you enough time to do that. So allow for a full in-breath and a full out-breath before I invite the full sound of the bell. And then I allow time for 3 breaths before the next sound or before, whatever we do next. So the first chapter of the book is emptiness, and it's a really fundamental idea in Buddhism, and the chapter heading exactly is emptiness, the wonder of interbeing. And Thich Nhat Hanh was looking for a word to kind of encapsulate the essence of the practice that he was teaching. And the word he came up with was interbeing. And it's a beautiful word because it's not difficult to kind of feel your way into what interbeing means. And it means that, in a way, it's the essence of ecology. Ecology is the science of if you're studying an organism, you can't study it by itself. You have to study the environment that the organism is a part of. So what you end up studying are organism-environment relationships. And we can't be by ourselves alone. We're not by ourselves alone. We are who we are because of our relationships to each other, to the ground that we're resting on, to the air and the sun and the whole earth community. And Thich Nhat Hanh has a wonderful one-liner, which is, the self is made entirely of non-self elements. So you just think about all of the things that constitute you. You have your senses and all that your senses bring you, sight and hearing and tasting and smelling and touching. And I think touch is very interesting, it's very intimate, and it seems to connect us with the next level of our being, which is our feelings. And there just seems to be a real intimate connection between touch and feeling. So we're made of feelings, and we're made of our perceptions. And part of the meaning of interbeing is that, we're not separate from what we perceive. We're not separate from what we experience. What we experience makes up ourself. And we have this fundamental delusion. This is the fundamental human problem in this perspective, is that we imagine that we're separate, and we're not. And it's really good news that we're not separate. We can relax. We imagine this is me and this is not me. This is mine and this is not mine. I have my problems, your problems, they're not my problems. Unless, we're really close. But those people over there, their problems are not my problems, But in reality, we're made of each other. And we're made of the air and the earth and the green and growing world and even the rocks and the mountains and the trees and the sky. The whole cosmos, it's all us. And we can draw a line. We can say, well, this is, me, everything on this side of this is me and mine, and everything on the other side of that line is not. But that's an entirely abstract and arbitrary line. In reality, our body is the world, and you're a part of my being. You're a part of my experience. I'm not separate from my experience. When I say you, I'm talking about you as I experience you. And when I say the world, I'm talking about the world as I experience the world. It's all I know. And so for me to imagine that, well, I'm separate from the rest of the world, is to say, well, one part of me is separate from another part of me. And so this interbeing is to really allow yourself to open up all the way and let the world be yourself, and because it is. And so to feel that is this is huge relief, really. It's just the weight of the world can just come off of your shoulders, because you are the world. And what you're experiencing is your conscious world. And of course there's vast reaches of the world that we're unaware of. But those are us too. So interbeing is this mode of experience where, I just expect that I will experience you as a part of me, as an aspect of myself, and that I'm an aspect of yourself. And so we inter-are in that sense. And, we all have a profound effect on each other. We have a profound effect, of course, on our beloveds that we're closest to. But in any context where we're interacting, we're part of each other's reality, and we make a difference in how we are experiencing ourselves and each other. So the really important teaching here is that there is no separate self. There is no one in charge. We imagine that, I don't know what it's like for you, but I sort of imagine there's this guy in here, and he's calculating the odds, and he's figuring out what to do next, and thinking about, well, if I do this, what'll happen? What will this person think? And I sort of think this guy's in charge. But the teaching is that there is no guy there. That's just thoughts and imagination at play. And so this is just the most fundamental teaching of no separate self. And the other part of this is the teaching of impermanence. And that is it's not really difficult to grasp. And impermanence has two layers to it. There's a kind of a superficial layer. Superficial is too strong of a word, but there's a deeper level of impermanence as well. And so the more obvious thing is that, well, in the future, things will be different. 200 years from now, unless things really change, we'll all be really different. And but the deeper meaning is that everything is changing in the present moment. Right here, right now, nothing is the same from moment to moment. Obviously, we're very similar to who we were a minute ago, but we're not exactly the same, and the world is not exactly the same. No atom is the same from moment to moment. Every atom in the universe, no matter where it is emitting light at all times, and every time it emits a photon of light, it's different. And so no moment from just millisecond to millisecond, we're different. Obviously, I'm really different than I was when I was an hour old. That's real clear. And I'm pretty different in some ways than I was 20 years ago. But this if you really let yourself take in impermanence and no separate self, you allow yourself to be in a world which is constant surprise. We don't know who we're going to be in the next moment. And I don't know who you're going to be in the next moment. But I know that everything's going to be different. And so we can just open up to this endless surprise of our existence. It's a wonder. And it's happening in the present moment. So it's why, being here now is so important. The present moment is where life is. So have you ever noticed how really great teachers have great one-liners? I've noticed that. Another of Thich Nhat Hanh's is, we're empty of a separate self, but we're filled with the entire cosmos. That's worth remembering, and you can cheer yourself up with that. There are actions, but there's no actor. There is thinking, but there's no thinker. We're a symphony of neurons producing thought and feeling and perception, but there's no conductor. One of the things that I love is this idea of spontaneity, that the realities of the world are spontaneous, and there's a phrase in Chinese, Zhuzhen, Tzujen, that means literally of itself so. And it's the Chinese way of saying spontaneity. And so the realities of the world have this quality of spontaneity. And we can see it in ourselves, our thoughts. If we don't control our thoughts, we use our thoughts to control the world. We think we're controlling the world with our thoughts, but what controls our thoughts? They manifest spontaneously. And so when you have this perspective of the spontaneity of things, then you can kind of relax and enjoy the processes that constitute your experience. And the other word that communicates well to me is transparency. In my kind of day-to-day busyness, it doesn't feel like I'm transparent. I wouldn't necessarily have the sense that someone looking at me would really know what was going on. But when I stop and calm down, then this feeling of transparency, I can relate to that, and it's a very light feeling. That movie title, The Incredible Lightness of Being? I just love that title, And to feel transparent is not to feel separate. And it's not to feel hidden. You actually could just look at me and see me. I'm not hiding in here. I'm transparent, and it's just it's just an image for me that communicates well. There's a very difficult side to accepting interbeing. If I am you and I am the world, that means I'm those aspects of the world too that I really don't like. Whatever it is, we're it too. And Thich Nhat Hanh, he's Vietnamese Zen master, and he left Vietnam in the middle of the Vietnam War to come to the U.S. and to speak on behalf of the Vietnamese people that we don't want this war, this proxy war, the communists and the anti-communists blowing up our country. We don't want this. And so the minute he left, he was what do you call it when he was exiled? Thank you. And he wasn't able to come back for 40 years. So he set up residence in France. He couldn't come to America because we were the ones who were bombing his country at that time. And so he went to France and he set up his home monastery, Plum Village. And while he was there, the tragedy of the boat people happened. And so, he's very connected, and so they're getting letters from the boat people. They go out there and they die from stormy seas, and they run out of food, they run out of water, and then they have pirates. And so one of the stories that came to him was the pirates boarded the ship and they raped an 11-year-old girl. And when her father protested, they threw him overboard, and then she jumped overboard. And he said, I couldn't sleep. It just was so horrible, so upsetting. And then he meditated on it. And he realized, we have that expression, there but for the grace of God go I, or there but for fortune go you or I. And he realized, he just kind of went through it. If I had been that boy raised in that fishing community, poverty for generations after generations, gets an invitation from the pirates to escape from the poverty, foolishly goes on board, and then with the encouragement, he rapes this 11-year-old girl. And he just saw that, it could have been me. And he wrote a poem about it called Call Me by My True Names. And he says, if you ask me if I'm the 11-year-old girl who was raped, yes, I'm the 11-year-old girl. If you ask me, am I the father? Yes, I'm the father. If you ask me, am I the pirate? I'm the pirate. And so it, interbeing, opening our hearts and our minds to the whole is going to ensure that our hearts will be broken. But it's worth it, because that's the price of being alive. And so it just brings up the whole issue of suffering. And if you know anything about Buddhism, you've probably heard, life is suffering. That's not the message. That's not what Buddhism says. But it does say that there is suffering, and we can't ignore it. We have to be open to the suffering And we have a phrase called no mud, no lotus. So the suffering that we have is the mud. And by attending to the mud, we're enabled to grow the lotuses, the great flowering of our beauty, our human potential is dependent upon our attention to the suffering. First of all, our own. But that, if we open to and we deal with our own suffering, we'll be able to stand it when somebody else shares theirs with us. And this practice empowers us to call our suffering by its true name. It's like when I said, actually I'm scared. That fear is a kind of a fundamental form of suffering. But if I just acknowledge it, it doesn't take over my whole world. Okay, I'm scared, so it's okay. I can even share that with you, and it's okay. But if I got scared about the fact that I was scared, that's the beginning of a panic attack, right? We escalate. I'm sure you can all identify. So another one of Thay's beautiful one-liners is, if we need an art of suffering, because if we know how to suffer, we'll suffer a lot less. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to throw our mud in each other's faces. We want to offer the lotus to our fellow human beings. So if we know how to suffer, we'll suffer a lot less. And that is the goal, is to generate well-being, happiness, joy. And there's a great joy that's waiting for us in waking up. Interbeing is a source of infinite well-being and happiness, joy, peace, even a little ecstasy. It's such a stunningly beautiful world, and all we have to do is open our eyes to feast on this fabulous paradise of forms and colors, and the sounds of life, so the sounds of the world, and the tastes and the smells and the touches. The world is so much bigger than our suffering and our projects and our worries and our regrets. It becomes very small in the context of the world of our experience. So one of the things that Thay says in the book is that we are made of 5 ever-changing, ever-flowing rivers. And those are the 5 elements of our being. Some of you may have heard of the 5 skandhas if you're into Sanskrit, Hinduist, Buddhist stuff. But 5 ever-changing, ever-flowing rivers, which are the elements of our being, And they are our body, our feelings, our perceptions, our mental formations is what they're called, but that's our imagination, our thoughts. It's also our feelings and our perceptions. They're mental formations in this way of looking at things also. And then our consciousness. Yeah, I'm talking too much.
Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you. So I think the last thing I'll say is that there's another kind of 3-word summary of what this is all about, and it's if you go to one of the monasteries in this Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition, there will be a big window at one end of the hall with 3 words on it, 3 Sanskrit words, which are smriti, samadhi, and prajna, which translates to mindfulness, concentration, and insight. And that's our practice. You know, we practice mindfulness, and when we sustain that, it deepens into concentration. And that concentration produces insight. You simply see clearly what's here. And it's the insight that liberates us. So that is really the holy grail, to use a non-Buddhist phrase of this practice. It is all about insight. And insight is not a formulation in words or symbols. It's deeper than that. It's an intuition, which means it's a direct experience. We can name it after we have it, but it's bigger than an idea. And the deepest insight of all is called the insight of interbeing. And it's interbeing not only among ourselves and between us and other individual realities, but we inter-are with the whole. You know, the whole cosmos, the source of the cosmos. We inter-are with the whole and all of the individual beings that constitute the whole. To me, wholeness, the experience of wholeness is the, for me personally, that communicates very clearly to experience wholeness. And you may have another word for this that works better for you. There's lots of ways that this is said. But to me, the idea that reality is a seamless whole, and it's seamless from the ground of being, the source, right to every detail. It's just seamless reality. And so it just includes everything. Includes all of us and all the aspects of us and of the world. And we can imagine divisions in the world, but they're imagined. And it's very useful to use our imaginations. You know, we're not going to stop thinking. We don't want to stop thinking. But we want to know that the world is not cut up. It's not made out of separate realities. And so to dwell in this wholeness is, well, that's what it's all about. And one of the meditations that we have is, in the ultimate I dwell. And that's what that's pointing to. You know, the ultimate is not something other than you and me and where we are now. The ultimate is us. It's right here. It's everything. But to feel the interbeing of the ultimate and the individual realities, the facets of life, is what we'd like to achieve.